you so much, Miss Joy. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone from where you're joining us today. My name is Nicole Mulako, and I'm the Program Officer in charge of Library and Consortia from the Training Center in Communication, which is a capacity building trust based at the University of Nairobi in Kenya. And we are excited to welcome all of you to today's webinar, which we are doing in partnership with Scifinity. So feel free to interact in the chat, share your questions, comments, and we'll be happy to answer them the best way we can. So to quickly go over the program, let me just share the program. To quickly go over the program, we're going to have welcoming remarks from Mr. Kasit Malik, who is the Publishing Director from Scifinity. Then we'll have Dr. Daniela Saderi, the co-founder and executive director of PREreview, who's going to talk about open peer review. And then we have Dr. Nicholas Outa, who is a TCC Africa trainer, and he's going to talk about the bias in peer review. Then we have Mr. Johansen Obanda from Crossref, who is going to take us through how Crossref strengthens research integrity. Then we have Mr. Ivan Oransky, who is the co-founder of Retraction Watch, and he's going to take us through retractions. And then lastly, we'll have Dr. Hanie, who is the editor-in-chief of Genomed Connect, and she's going to talk about strengthening peer review workflows, what Scifinity is doing in that area. So without much further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Kasit Malik to give his opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and hi, everyone. And thank you, Nicole, for outlining the structure of the webinar. Let me thank to TCC as well for coordinating and conducting such a valuable webinar. May I share a few slides so that I quickly wrap up and give you some thoughts about Scifinity? Can you see the slides?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kasit Malik, and I'm working as publishing director in Scifinity Publishing. Basically, we are an STM publisher and based in Abu Dhabi, UAE. Practically, my role is to looking after the journey. I mean, launching the journals, coordinating with the editors, board members, and I am the one who is responsible for the quality publications. I mean, till the end of everything. We are strongly connected with the wider Middle East authors like Africa, especially South Asia and Middle East. So that's my brief introduction. Before going, wrap up the things, I just want to share some snapshots about the Scifinity. It's very important to showcase here. We launched this publisher back in 2023 with the idea that there is a regional gap. I mean, especially for the MESIA author, that is Middle East, South Asia, Africa, where the authors have less support, face some serious financial barriers, less visibility on mainstream journals. So we plan and execute a publisher who do not compromise the quality and who look after these pain points. And that's how we established this publisher. And you will be surprised to see just 2 years what we have done so far. We have around 13 journals, 2 in the pipeline. We have more than 400 editorial board members all over the world, which is regionally diversified, gender diversified. We have very good response. I mean, more than 500 manuscripts submitted, and we have published around 128 manuscripts till date in just 2 years. Alongside, we are very focused for the affiliations and collaborations, especially regional and international institutes. We have around 9 affiliations and partnerships till date. and we are very keen to sponsoring the event. We have a sponsor around 10 events in this time period, and additionally we got a very you can say a recognized award, that is a Future 50, and this is from the Ministry of Economy here in UAE. So that is a quick overview of this publisher till date, and we are very focused towards the future and more affiliations and indexations. I mean, we have a plan of 10 years to build this publisher regionally, not only the region regionally recognized, but internationally. And in the last, why this webinar is very important. Yes, we have a partnership with the TCC, and this event, especially, you know, after the COVID, the rise in the manuscript submissions, the competition, and again, unfortunately, the research and integrity issues, the paper mill activities, and we all know that peer review is the pressure point. So that's why we have chosen this topic, so that this will really help, especially for early and mid-career researchers to observe, to learn things, that how they can identify the red flags and how to avoid those practices. And I found the quality of the speakers in this webinar, you will definitely have a very good experience. You will learn a lot. We will learn a lot. So that's all from my side, and I'm very thankful to TCC and all the participants who joined this webinar. And I just like to hand it over to my other colleagues to continue with the core of this webinar. Thank you, Wango. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kasit. I'm Joy Owango, the Executive Director of the Training Center in Communication. And as Dr. Kasit Malik has mentioned, we got into a collaboration with Scifinity, because one of the things that they noticed was that even though they were a new publisher, they were targeting the Middle East and North Africa, and they were not getting a lot of researchers from North Africa and also Sub-Saharan Africa. That was the first part. But then as they were building up, they also started noticing challenges when it came to peer review. They were very cognizant of some of the challenges that when it came to peer review and research integrity, and that is why we came up with this webinar. Because right now, when we are talking about peer review, we need to understand that it is a cornerstone of publishing and critical mechanism for ensuring research quality, credibility, and integrity. However, many early and mid-career researchers lack adequate exposure to the ethical peer review practices emerging, which lead to emerging integrity challenges and also pathways to participate in meaningful peer review process. To bridge this gap, TCC Africa, together with Scifinity, as I've mentioned earlier, has convened this webinar to strengthen research capacity in ethical peer review and responsible publishing. And this session will combine practical training, integrity insights, real-world experiences from reviewers and editors. As Nicole had mentioned, in terms of the speakers we have invited, we have pre-review, who we've been working with closely, especially when it comes to the biases in peer review. And this will be very important because one of our speakers, one of our research capacity advisors, Dr. Nicholas Outa, will be giving further insight on that. And then we also have partners from Retraction Watch, who will be talking about retractions and research integrity and retractions, especially when it comes to publications. So looking at all these aspects will give you a focus on elements on not only peer review, but also research integrity in the scholarly and publishing ecosystem. This is really important to us because when we are working with any partners, even if they're publishers, it's important for you to note that this is also key to them, but they are also keen to build that capacity with as many stakeholders so that their authors and future authors can have the capacity to understand the tenets of peer review, the biases involved in peer review, and also elements on research integrity, particularly when it comes to scholarly communication. So what is the focus of our webinar? We'll be looking at the essentials of the ethical peer review, integrity in publishing, and of course, we'll be engaging most of you who are either early or mid-career researchers. And then we're looking at how we can work closely with Scifinity on peer review opportunities. This is just not a workshop. We are looking at how some of you can be identified to shadow some of the peer review team members of Scifinity so that you can have a hands-on support system on peer review. As I'd mentioned, our speaker group include, I've talked about pre-review with Dr. Daniela Saderi. We have some of the Scifinity senior editors. We also have Scifinity Research Integrity leads and also TCC Africa Research Integrity speakers. We've also got early career reviewer from at the end of, and we also have early career review reviewers who are from Scifinity who are going to take us through first-hand experiences and lessons from early participation in peer review. So as much as this is it's a webinar, we're trying to make it a webinar / workshop, whereby as we are going through the presentations from the speakers, after the workshop, we are going to have interactive questions to have a better understanding, to understand whether you do get the concept of peer review, especially when it comes to scholarly publishing, but most importantly, the biases in peer review, but also research integrity as well, and the elements that are needed when it comes to understanding the aspects of research integrity as it pertains to scholarly communication. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Ms. Nicole Mulaku, who is going to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Joy, for that wonderful take through in regards to our partnership with Scifinity and why this webinar is very important. So without much further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Daniela Saderi, who is the co-founder and executive director of Pre-Review, and her presentation is on open peer review, a pathway to trust and transparency in research. Welcome, Dr. Daniela.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you so much, Joy, and Dr. Kassit Malik also for this webinar, for inviting me. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniela Saderi. I use she, her pronouns. I am the executive director and co-founder of Pre-Review. Pre-Review and TCC Africa had a wonderful collaboration a few years ago, and I still consider you and TCC Africa one of the most pleasant collaboration that I've ever experienced, where we actually did the work to build that trust. So it wasn't just a word that we put as a collaborator, but I'm really glad to be here with you all. It is late for me. I am in Portland, Oregon in the United States, so it is 11:15 p.m. I'm grateful for the flexibility to shift the schedule to have me go first. But definitely it is not, because I will do my best to stay alert throughout the entire webinar. And so a tiny bit about me. I have a background in neuroscience. Up here on the top left is a photo of me in the laboratory at Oregon Health and Science University, where I did my PhD. So I came to the United States for my PhD, but I'm originally from Italy. And I did some training around Europe before coming here, and I've been living here ever since. The PhD here can last as long as it needs. So it was about 6.5 years. About halfway through, I had the pleasure to meet some really changers or activists in the space of science that in the space of open science, that made me really want to try something different after my PhD. So Pre-Review was co-founded with Dr. Samantha Hindle here on the top right, and Dr. Monica Granados. And it was an experiment, something that came out of our passion for openness and for collaboration. And it is still alive 7 years later. And I am really grateful for having a team of 5 people And Mozilla has been, I'm still considering myself a Mozillian, has been one of the communities that really opened up my mind and my connections to the world of open science and beyond. And I live with two kids and my husband in Portland, and they keep me very busy and tired. So it is an entire webinar about peer review. I don't think I need to define peer review for anyone, but I want to read this definition from Wikipedia, not because it's my favorite, but because it sparks some questions that I think are really important to look into. So peer review is seen as an evaluation of work by one or more people with similar competencies as the producers of the work, and it functions as a form of self-regulation by qualified members of the profession within the relevant field. So the questions and the highlighted in bold there is this like qualified members. So like who are those qualified members? And excuse me, more importantly, perhaps, it's like who decides who's qualified and who is not. And these are some of the key questions that we really like to reflect constantly at peer review. And I know that there is going to be a whole talk about bias, and this is something that we really care about peer review, just like thinking about what are the systems that we are trying to tackle when we bring change. But I want to bring a little bit of data just to say that there's actually not very much that we know about who is considered an expert or who is a reviewer, because as many of you know, peer review happens behind closed door for the most part. And so this is a study that is right now is getting dated, but it looked at what they called in the paper gatekeepers. So this was a group of senior editors, reviewing editors and peer reviewers at eLife, the journal eLife, between 2012 and 2017. So it was about 8,000 total, and most of these were reviewers. And they saw a very big disparity when they looked at gender identity, and also a very big disparity when they looked at geographical location of the reviewers. And of course, this is a journal that is based in the UK and the US, but still, it is. I don't think it is something that would need a lot of convincing. Thinking about that, there is a big regional discrepancy in who are the reviewers of global research. And so with that being predominant from North America and Europe, and less than 2% of South America, Oceania, and Africa combined. And the other thing that we know is that these experts, that are the reviewers, or at least again, is once again another study from 2019, they're not early career researchers. This was a survey of shy of 500 respondents, and they saw that predominantly postdocs. So postdoctoral researchers have never been engaged at that point in time. They've never been engaged in peer review, informal peer review, so invitation with a journal. And it's interesting because I would consider postdocs experts. But when they asked if they have ever actually done the review, perhaps under invitation of their PI, many of them had, but they've done it in a way that it wasn't acknowledged. And so that is referred to in this paper as ghost writing. So there are many issues with peer review, and we can talk about them, and I'm sure this is going to be a big discussion. And here I just summarized a few that we tried to really tease apart in our work at peer review. The number really is not the main concern. The concern is that the number is small, relatively small, and insufficient to the number of review requests, but really small compared to is small if you consider also the homogeneity of the group that is predominantly male, mid-of-late career researchers, and selected by journal editors as experts in their field. But yet, many of them have never received formal training in reviewing. So, Joy, you mentioned about the importance of training, and this is not just for early and mid-career. Really, training in peer review is not something that academia provides consistently. So even when the most senior, and they might have a lot of experience in research, but experience in reviewing is not something that you gained, in my opinion, just by being a researcher yourself. So here are just a few examples of reviews. Obviously this is skewed, but this paper is simply Menor. This is a real review. What the authors have done is an insult to science. or even things like the author's status as a trans person has distorted his view of sex beyond biological reality. The author's name sounds Spanish. I didn't even read the manuscript because I'm sure it's full of bad English. These are selected reviews that are real reviews that have been found by this group that did a study to look specifically how these unprofessional reviews disproportionately actually harm underrepresented groups in science and technology and engineering and math. And the angle of this paper was just basically saying that in addition to these terrible reviews, they also affect more people that already have to feel like they don't belong, because we live in a system in which has shaped the idea of a scientist around a certain group. So without going into more details, this is just to make an example that not all reviews, even those, and these were done by experts, are what we think are doing what we think that they should do. So when we add the word open to peer review, what happens, right? And so first of all, before we start digging into that, we have to think about the fact that there is when we talk about open peer review, you may be talking with someone else, they're thinking about something completely different. And this is a review, a systematic review of what open peer review is. It's a little dated at the moment, but I think it does a really good job at saying, like, you may be thinking about open identities, like you actually know who the reviewers are. As many of you know, peer review is often done in a double anonymous or a single anonymized way. So the identity of the reviewers is rarely disclosed. Or maybe the reports are open, or maybe is talking about the participation, so anyone can contribute to the review process. That's less common, but that's what we do, for example. Or maybe the final version, or like there is an open there is a commenting that is open to everyone. So even in that case, well, like what is open? What open are we talking about? It's important to start thinking about what is open peer review actually doing or improving in the system. But I guess before going, I think most people who think about open peer review think about either identities or the fact that the report themselves are actually published alongside the paper. So those are two most common ways that open peer review is referred to. So when we do that, when we add that element of, the report of the review itself could be read by anyone alongside the paper, that certainly adds transparency in the process. And when you also add the name of the reviewer, that helps perhaps build trust. I did add a question, and sneaked out a question in my title, if you haven't noticed at the beginning, because I think that just by opening up the process of peer review, and again, we can debate on what that means, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are actually building more trust or more transparency. And that is because it's interesting also to think about what trust are we thinking about, right? Are we thinking about, how are we going to trust the new people are going to come and be reviewing the manuscript? I would want to trust that they're going to bring integrity. To me, that question is already wrong, because the trust that I'm interested in about, and we're interested about building a peer review, is the trust with all the expertise that it does exist in the world and is not currently tapped into because of bias and because of it doesn't reflect what we may think of an expert. So I'm not going to talk about that because I know there is a talk afterwards, but trust very often means gatekeeping, even in the context of open science. And transparency sometimes is kind of confused for openness. Opening everything doesn't necessarily mean that we're actually doing a better process and a more equitable process. It may inadvertently maybe raise more barriers to participation. I'm going to these are just some prompts for reflection. And recently, Dr. Prachee Avasti, who is the CEO at Arcadia Science and a scientist that has been fighting for preprints and open science for a long time, has posted a really provocative piece that is linked, and I'm going to share the link to my slides. Apologies, I haven't done that yet, in the chat just after I'm done. And this is a blog post in which she provocatively, again, but just she mentions how even the best people that are really trying to open up science and to bring that trust and integrity, it is so difficult to break free from those schemas that actually keep us redoing and rebuilding the same systems that we want to overcome. And so open science is not just science by default, and it's not equitable science by default. So we don't have a key that will open all locks. And so I want to, at Peer Review, we're very keen in understanding what are the unintended consequences of everything that we do. And I'll give you an example of what we're doing. And specifically, doesn't raise systemic oppression. So we really need to continue asking those questions, even when we talk about open peer review. In fact, there are people that are completely, and sometimes, some days I am too, equity in science is just a lie. There's just not, the scientific system has not been designed for equity, for really engaging everyone and valuing everybody's knowledge in the same way. And so it is, even open access and open science, it is not free of these faults. And so we need to actively chip at those walls if we want to build a better future. So at Peer Review, we're really keen in open peer review. Obviously, we're not a journal. I'll tell you a little bit more about the details about what we do. But really, what we are after is change in the way that scholarly peer review, the system of scholarly peer review, the very fabric that holds academia up in a certain way, and opening it, or truly opening it to the expertise and the voices and valuing the knowledge that is built around the world that might not be fitting exactly what we may have been taught that science is. And with that, I don't mean to welcome science that is not true. I don't mean to get rid of integrity. I mean to really think and questioning about what is knowledge and what do we consider expertise and what's not. And I think that to be part of the change, we need to work together with a lot of pieces and parts in the system. We are specifically tackling peer review in a very interesting way. We are not a journal. Peer Review is not a journal. Peer Review is a nonprofit organization that operates in this, where we think about 3 different pillars. One of the things that we do is training, and that was a big part of the collaboration with TCC Africa. And I'm going to move quick because I think I'm running out of time. We also organize community events to review together. And we have a platform that I hope you're going to try here, and it's free, and it will always be free because we are nonprofit. But it is a place in which anyone with an ORCID identifier can review preprints and data sets. Data set is new, as of a month, shy of a month. So there is not very many reviews of data sets, but primarily review of preprints. I'm not want to lecture anyone about preprints, but one of the most important things about what preprints can do, because they're posted by the authors online, is they can allow for anyone to provide feedback openly. And preprints have been growing, and that doesn't mean that if you publish a preprint, you're not going to publish in a journal. It is a way to put your work out and get feedback, and also continue, if the authors wish, to pursue your publication in a journal. And the number of preprints has been increasing through the years, and this is a study that looks at how they've been increasing in different regional. So some differences there, but it's kind of a similar trend. And so as preprint review adoption, obviously at a much lower scale, but is also seeing an increase. And on pre-review right now, we have, as of today, 1,635 reviews. And those are reviews of preprints. There are many other projects that are doing a review of preprints, and one of the things that distinguishes us is, I think, this particular attention of trying not to reproduce some of the barriers that intentionally or unintentionally are put out in the context of a more journal-like. And I'm not criticizing other projects, but that's kind of something we're doing. So really trying to lower the barriers to access. Like, as I mentioned, anyone with an ORCID ID can participate and write reviews. You can use your name, or you can use a pseudonym that's unique to you. You will be kept accountable. If you violate the code of conduct, your account will be removed. But you can remain anonymous to others as long as you follow the code of conduct and decide to reveal your name whenever you're ready to do so. And there are various ways of customizing your profile settings. And we're really trying to help create workflows to review that support constructive, actionable feedback. So there are some structured reviews forms in there in the workflow that you all can try out. As part of lowering barriers, we also need to recognize that English, yes, it is a very common language, a main language for science, but there are other beautiful languages out there. And we're just starting a process of multilingualism that ended this year with the translation in Latin American, Spanish, and Brazilian Portuguese of the whole website. I think what time? I lost track of time. I might have maybe 1 minute to conclude. I wanted to mention a couple of things. One is that this kind of like aspect that we're after of connecting the authors that are needing the feedback with the reviewers that are ready to provide the review. And so we are working within other infrastructures to make this process of notifications that can go one way and then another. So alert the reviewers that are ready to review. And this could be something that may be integrated in a journal, but we do not want, again, to replace that system. We want to aid the system with the community. I'm sorry if I'm going to go a little fast here, but these are just information that hopefully I'll all written there and can go back to that. I want to mention last things is that we really want to bring the joy of reviewing together, and that one aspect that we do that is by designing these groups and clubs. We have 45 clubs that are groups of reviewers that collaborate on reviews of preprints, and this is one. Some are open, such as the Review and Curate Network, and you are welcome to join. And so there is a button on it on the website, and some are closed. And I'm going to, this dataset review, as I mentioned, is a new things, and we are hoping to expand what we are going to review. Preprints are just one object that is allowed for community review, but there are other research objects on dataset software. And here are some links and things that you can go after and try out on your own and do. And again, I will put the link in the chat. And I just want to ask that question again and really say that we really believe that review is for all researchers and not just those that are in the academy, and peer review is for you. So I really hope that you try, and I want to thank my team and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daniela, for the wonderful presentation. And I hope now everyone, we've all learned something about peer review. If you had heard about it, now you have more details about it. You understood what they do, the clubs they have, and what contributions they make. So feel free to drop any questions for Dr. Daniela before she leaves. You can drop her some questions in the chat, because given her time difference, she'll leave in the next few minutes. So drop her some questions.
I'll try to stay a little bit, but thank you.
Okay. So next we have Dr. Nicholas Outa, who is a TCC Africa Capacity Trainer, and he's going to take us through the biasness in peer review. Welcome, Dr. Nicholas.
Thank you, Nicole. I hope I will be visible. I am in a place that is not well lit, but I also want people to put a face to the voice. So I hope you can put a face to this voice. Then I'll just go. I'll just just switch off my camera. As already said, I am Nicholas Outa, Dr. Nicholas Outa. My background is in fisheries and aquaculture. I did my research on, my passion is about climate smart food systems. So I did my research on aquaponics, and I was looking at the water and nutrient use efficiency of aquaponic systems. Actually, NFT, we call it nutrient film technique aquaponic system. So I was looking at how much crop and how much fish can I produce in that system, and what is the efficiency of the system in terms of nutrient and water use efficiency, and also power, of course. So basically that was the area. I have been a trainer and a research capacity advisor at TCC Africa for almost a decade now. So most of what we do is train, support, and empower scholars in all aspects of scientific writing and communication, and that includes peer review. So I think peer review is a cornerstone of science, and for a long time, so many scholars have always made it, because it's voluntary work pretty much. It's only now that some organizations are now bringing issues around how then can we also compensate their researchers for their peer review work and how can we recognize them. But it has not been like that for some time. So it has been an area where people volunteer their time and to polish science. But then that comes with a lot of things. And one of them is the biases that I want to talk about. So, Nicole, if you could go ahead and just now share the screen, and then I will proceed with a very short presentation on biases that are related to peer review.
Okay, just give me a second.
Okay. So as she shares this, I think we really need to just think through, even before we get into the presentation. We are human beings and we all have our biases. Even sometimes when we meet people, before we even get to know them, we already have sometimes just based on how we have seen them or just based on some little information we have about them, we already have perceptions. And these perceptions can really influence our interactions with these people. So it happens also in peer review. But I think the most important thing is to bring to the attention of us as scholars that indeed we are human, and these biases can creep into our review work, and it can either influence or impact on how then we look at people's works and how we review and give feedback. So the clarion call now here is for us to be aware that it's true that we can be biased as humans, but then it's good for us to appreciate that, and then how then can we also mitigate? Basically, that's what my presentation is about. What kind of biases exist? How do we mitigate them, and what dangers do these biases have with regard to scientific writing and publishing? So that's what I will talk about. My presentation, part of it is modified from the Open Peer Review project that was done by organizations that have been acknowledged, including Pre-Review and also Pre-Review, Africa Archive, TCC Africa, AIDA Africa, and eLife. So part of this has been modified. Of course, there's something that is added, but part of it has been modified from the documents that, not documents, but information that came from this project. Next, please. Yes, so this is a guide. This is a reviewer guide that we used in that training. But then I want to start by just giving us an idea of what then this looks like. So for a peer reviewer, it's recommended that before we even get into reading the full context or the full paper and start reviewing, the first thing that is recommended here is that we first check our biases and assumptions. So it's important that this comes at the beginning before we do anything. So when you are approached, I am an academic editor with PLOS ONE, and what happens is when you are allocated a paper as an editor, the first thing you do is look out for potential reviewers. Now, when I allocate someone a paper to review, the first thing I would always expect them to do is do they just check and be conscious and be aware if they have any biases and assumptions about that paper. Because if there are assumptions or conflicts of interest, then it's very possible for them to say, hey, I have seen this paper, even if it's blinded, reading the context, I know where this paper has been published, or I know whoever has published this paper, or all these things. So, I'm conflicted, or for some reasons, I have certain biases that will make it difficult for me to review this paper. So the first thing is to check our biases and assumptions. Then the second one is to gain a conceptual understanding. So the most important thing in this case is sometimes people start reviewing a paper and they start pointing out to problems already, or pointing out to mistakes before they get to understand the entire paper. What happens is sometimes you review the paper, you start asking a lot of questions, but then when you read the paper to the bottom, then you realize most of the questions you are asking at the beginning have been answered somewhere, either in the discussion, the conclusion, or sometimes in some parts of the methodology or something like this. So it is after checking your biases and acknowledging them, and saying, if you realize there are no biases, or if you know how to deal with them, then you need to gain a conceptual understanding. So it means reading the entire paper without pointing out to mistakes. So you first read the entire paper just to get an idea of what that paper is about. Then you go ahead now to identify major and minor issues. So major issues could be issues around methodology, issues around maybe data, issues around data analysis, and discussions and all these things. basically major issues would be the issues that are touching on the quality of science. And then there could be minor issues like, issues to do with maybe some formatting issues or some issues to do with the language. And then you make your feedback clear, constructive, and actionable. So clear, constructive, and actionable feedback makes it very easy for the authors to know what to do. If you tell them that your methodology is vague, so that is the feedback you are giving to, as a reviewer, as a peer reviewer, that is the feedback you are giving to an author. How would you expect this author to act on this review or this comment? It's very difficult. Or if you tell them that the data analysis method is flawed, or you used the wrong data analysis method, and all those things, or if it's insulting, then it's very difficult for them to to know what to do. So make it clear, constructive, and actionable. Why we are making it constructive? Because then sometimes if you write insulting, not insulting, but sometimes you find feedback that is a bit too personal. If this is a young scholar who is just starting out, then they start on a very wrong footing. They will start by saying, from that feedback, I don't think I'm cut out for publishing. I don't think I can publish. So you discourage them. But if you make it friendly, constructive, and actionable, then it's very easy for them to know, okay, so you are suggesting that I use this methodology for this reason. You are suggesting I do this analysis for this reason, without insulting them. Yeah, that makes it very easy for them to know what to do. Then after that, you put it all together into a coherent narrative. So make it clear, just write a very clear report on what needs to be done where and how then that needs to be done. And then you check your review and share it with the editor, who will finally share it with the author. So that is basically the summary of what happens in the peer review process. Next. Next. Okay, so Nicole, next slide. Okay, so step one is assessing the biases. We said we all have our biases. So the bias reflection guide is a tool meant to help reviewers assess their own biases, guiding them through a non-judgmental, self-reflective process. So we will look at it a little bit on what then do we do with some of these biases if we realize they are there. How do we handle them? Because sometimes we have them, we are humans. Now, why do we use this? It's guided that we all have biases, and it's important to identify how our biases and assumptions may interfere with an objective evaluation of the manuscript. Once these are identified, we can begin the work needed to alleviate their implications and eventually eliminate them altogether. So I think it's not possible to solve a problem you don't understand. So, or if you don't own up to a problem, or if you've not identified a problem and appreciated it's a problem, then it's very difficult for you to confront it. So the first step is, do I have any biases? Yes or no? If yes, what are those specific biases? And then how then can I mitigate them so that they don't interfere with my judgment, or they don't interfere with my interrogation of the manuscript in front of me? Then how to use it, I think these are things we can check around later. Yes, next. Next, okay. So the common biases and assumptions, one of them is knowing the author's gender leads me to feel more critical in my peer review, in my review of the manuscript. And I think one of the things that was pointed out was about gender. And, sometimes if you feel like knowing the gender, if you know that this paper has been written by a man or by a woman, for example, or a person of a certain gender, if you think that leads you to be more critical, then that's a bias. Knowing the author's ethnicity or country of origin leads me to question the accuracy and reliability of the study. If you feel like if this paper has come from a specific country and that will make me look at it differently, then that is a bias already. The country in which the author's research institute is located makes me feel confident in the accuracy and reliability of the study. So sometimes you assume that because a paper has been, the author's institute is based in a specific country, then you say, I think researchers from that country are really good. So I think this paper is just good. So it means that you will overlook certain things that could have required your attention, but because you are biased, just based on that alone, you might end up not giving a critical and very objective review. Then, as a respected leader in the field, the senior author's reputation helps me to feel confident in the accuracy and reliability of the study. So if you read a paper, or if you read through a manuscript and say that, okay, I am seeing the first author, or I'm seeing the lead author here is Professor so-and-so, And in our field, I know that this professor is the authority, so to speak. So you say, okay, being that he's the first author or is part of this publication, I think this paper has just some good research. That is an assumption. So then you need to confront all those assumptions. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what are these biases? I think we've talked about a little bit of them, but I'll just repeat some of them. So there's the confirmation bias, so where we have research findings and theoretical perspectives. So sometimes, based on the findings we see, we are always if sometimes this research already confirms whatever it is that you know, or whatever it is that aligns with what you think is right, then sometimes you don't give it critical review, because you say, okay, it's already known that this specific diet enhances the growth of fish, for example. But then now, you are just trying to confirm. So the fact that this conforms to what you already know, then you say, okay, it's okay, I don't need to read so much, because these results are some things I agree with already. That's a problem. We've talked about gender bias, and there's sometimes there's perceived competence or credibility based on gender. I don't know where this comes from. I have no idea, but then this is how people sometimes are. So sometimes they look at it and say, okay, this one has been published by maybe a very young scholar, or this one has been published by a scholar of a specific gender. So I think, I don't think this one is credible. I think this is credible just because it has been published by a scholar of a certain gender. So I think these are things we need to confront. Then there's institutional bias. Institutional bias I've also talked about. So if you think that because these authors or these scholars work with a specific working group, or these scholars work with, these scholars are affiliated to a specific institute, and this is an institute that has high ranking, then I think, this is a good paper, or this is a good piece of research. Or sometimes you say, okay, I'm looking at this institute, I think it's from a specific, it's a small institute, so I don't think they can produce any good data. Those biases need to be confronted, but you can only confront them if you accept the fact that they are there and you identify them. Then there's also nationality and geographic bias. So sometimes people have biases towards people from specific regions, for example. So there's familiarity. So for example, you'd say people from a specific country or specific region would not do good research, or would do good research. Or cultural stereotypes. So, sometimes people also, as researchers, have cultural stereotypes. And these are things we need to confront in peer review, and these are things we need to find ways of dealing with. Then there's publication bias, where sometimes people try to, push positive results and try to not give very good review to results that maybe confront, or results that publish negative results. So these are sometimes problems. Then there's citation bias. So citation bias sometimes comes when I look at, as a reviewer, for example, if I see this person has cited me or cited people I know, then I will say, okay, this guy has cited me, or this person has cited friends or people I know, so I will look at their work favorably just because of citation bias. Or perceived impact. So these are some of the biases that people deal with. So the fact is, look at that paper or that manuscript in front of you and ask yourself, is this something I want to look at? Do I have any biases, and how then do I deal with these biases so that they don't cloud my judgment as a reviewer? Next, please. Yeah, so these biases will have a lot of impact, but then I will just talk about a few of them. So when we have all these biases, there's this skewed landscape. And this now, as I talked about, it overemphasizes on positive results. So sometimes, because of those biases, people end up just giving a good, favorable review to papers that are talking about that are talking about positive results. Then there's inequitable funding. So sometimes underrepresented researchers, because of the biases, you realize we might end up, disadvantaging certain researchers. So maybe young scholars who are just starting out, or scholars working in small institutes that are just trying to build a reputation. Now, if during the peer review already we have disadvantaged them by looking at their papers in a way that is not favorable, then it means that for funding, because they need to publish, for example, to also build consortia or just build their profile, then we are already disadvantaging them because we were being biased at the time of review. Then delayed progress. hindering scientific discovery. If we are going to say that we are only going to give favorable reviews to papers that are presenting certain narratives, for example, then that bias alone can be a problem. Then there's eroded trust, so integrity of publishing is sometimes questioned. I have read papers that have been published in journals that I will not mention their names, but then you read through and ask yourself, how did this glaring mistake go through the peer review process? Was it a bias or was it an oversight? So some of these things, so these journals end up having people questioning them, because somebody would say, okay, I read through the abstract, for example, but there's something that was missing, or there were a lot of issues around this publication that I think if the peer review was done in the right way, then this could have been, somebody could have taken notice of this. But then maybe it could be as a result of a bias. So somebody looked at the work and made a lot of assumptions that maybe because of the names of the authors, these are people I know are strong, or this is an institute that I know is very strong, cannot produce bad results. So those are the things. So let's try to deal with the biases when they are there, so that we don't allow whatever should not go into publication be published. Next, please. Yeah, so what are the strategies do we have? We have several strategies. So I will just mention not so many of them. Daniela talked about open peer review and how then that can also enhance accountability and transparency. Also, we also need to use structured review forms. I have seen journals, some of them, I am an editor in one journal that has a very clear structured review forms, so that we have a structured way of giving feedback. Sometimes you find journals that do not have structured ways of giving feedback. So people just write, text the way they like and give feedback in a way that is not very standardized. So that can also, and if that is compounded by bias, the biases that we are talking about, then it becomes a big problem. Then we also need to talk about diverse reviewer pools. So diverse backgrounds, diverse institutions, and also diverse geographic regions. So this can also reduce the biases and the impacts of such biases. If we are going to, because then if sometimes we say that we are only going to work with people from a specific area, or we're going to work with people from a specific region, for example, then that can entrench some of these biases and push certain researchers out of the way, because then they are disadvantaged just because of the geographic biases we were talking about. Then there are registered reports. So this could be study protocols and data collection protocols that can also help enhance transparency in peer review. The others could be statistical checks, encouraging self-reflection. I think this self-reflection is one of those very key things, because apart from people reviewing your work, you are also a reviewer, of some sort. So you are not reviewing manuscripts, but then you are guiding students and you are reviewing and giving them feedback. So we really need to talk about this bias reflection and assessment or influence. So I think every time, henceforth, anytime you have a paper to review, or you have a manuscript to review, or you have a proposal to review, ask yourself, do I have any biases? And if I do, how then can they influence my work, and how can I mitigate? And if you feel that the biases you cannot mitigate against those biases, just go ahead and say that for this reason, I'm not able to review that paper, give it to someone else. It saves you a lot of time, and it also saves you, you save the publishing industry by giving them genuine reviews whenever you can. So blinding is also one of those recommendations, but then blind review is now there are also a lot of discussions around it, because people can hide behind anonymity and give feedback that is not actionable, or sometimes insulting feedbacks, because they know this guy will, these people will not know that I'm the one who gave that feedback, or I'll just reject their paper without a reason, and they will not know who I am. So these are also, in as much as we are saying that blinding it can reduce bias because we don't know whose paper we are reviewing, sometimes it can also encourage it, because then out of malice, because we are human, we don't know, you never know how somebody does their judgment. So you never know how somebody judges some of these things. So these are also things that could have, these are things we could say they could work, but then sometimes they also have their weaknesses that also still need to be addressed. Next, please. Yes, so this is the bias reflection guide. This was developed by Dr. Antoinette. She has been acknowledged down here. So we used this in our peer review, open peer reviewers training, that the first thing is to identify or evaluate your biases. So why should someone have this bias or make this assumption? So you say, okay, I am assuming the bias I have is gender bias, for example. So I'm assuming that if a paper is published by a specific gender, then that paper is of good quality. But then you need to reflect and ask yourself, why would I have such a, where did this even come from? You know, where did it come from? Does it have any scientific backing? Or how can I defend if somebody asks me why I made that assumption? So confront them and evaluate what they are. And then add this. What happens if I add an absolute word to the statement? E.g., never, always. So for example, if the assumption is that a specific gender, that if I see that the paper has been published by a specific gender, then that paper is a good paper, then they are saying that you could try by adding certain words like always or never, like a specific gender never publishes bad results, or a specific gender always has good results. And then try to listen to yourself. If I add that, is it true? Or could there be some mistakes in that absolute decision that I'm trying to make? Then try to reverse. Can you think of situations in which that may not be the case? So can you think of situations where that gender could make mistakes? Or can you think of situations where institutions of that caliber can also present results that are not legit? You know, just try to reverse it and then rephrase. Can you rephrase the statement to include this reflection? So you have done a reflection and said, okay, there are cases where sometimes these organizations that we think are big and cannot make mistakes have given flawed results. Because sometimes it's out of human error or sometimes out of whatever it is, because they are also human. There are cases where this can happen. Now, with all that, after after adding the absolute statement and also after reversing and rephrasing, then you sit down and reflect and ask yourself, hey, yeah, if this biases, if I think it's so strong that I cannot rephrase and I cannot mitigate it, then the best thing is for me to say that I'm not going to handle this because it's something that is beyond what I can deal with. So then just do the honorable thing of saying, unfortunately, I'm not able to be to evaluate this paper or this manuscript or this proposal, so it can be given to someone else. Next, please. Yes, so thank you. I was just to bring your attention to the fact that there are biases, they have implications on publication and what can cause those biases. That's the end of my presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholas, for that presentation. Let me hand over to Ms. Joy to welcome the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and also Dr. Nicholas Outa. That was very insightful. And for everyone else, I hope you can see now what came out of our partnership with pre-review and the capacity we've been building, especially when it comes to biases in peer review. So our next speaker is from Crossref. For context, Crossref is a DOI registration agency, mostly used by publishers. And all of you who've read papers, you've definitely seen the DOI alphanumeric link on your papers, and that is from Crossref. And this time we are going to have the community manager, the community engagement manager for Africa, that is Johansen Obanda, who is going to take us through how Crossref strengthens research integrity, especially when it comes to publishing. Johansen, over to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Great. Thank you very much. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, please continue.
All right, great. Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Johansen Obanda, and I'm glad to join you here today. I'll be talking about Crossref and how peer review also supports research integrity, and basically about the value and use of metadata for research integrity. So I'm going to briefly introduce Crossref and what Crossref does. Our mission at Crossref is to make research objects easy to find, cite, link, assess, and reuse. We are a nonprofit membership organization, and we exist to make scholarly communications better. Many of you might have known about CROSREF already, and as Joy had said, we are a DOI registration agency. We got founded in the year 2000 by a few scientific publishers, and for the reason of connecting references, and that's why the DOIs exist. And so 25 years since we were created, we have a little over 20,000 members who have registered about 174 million open metadata records. And so on the value and use of metadata, we'll start by defining what metadata is. Metadata is data that provides information about other data, but not the content of the data. It gives structure and context. Metadata is all around us. In a digital photo, for example, metadata would be represented by the location, time, settings, the date the picture was taken, and all other metadata, but not the photograph itself. So metadata is all around us. And today we'll just talk about metadata in relation to research outputs. On this slide, there are some examples of metadata as they relate to research outputs when registering their content. Member suppliers with a wide range of metadata. And some of these is basic metadata like titles, dates, author names, abstracts, DOIs, location URL. But we also collect non-bibliographic data about the item being registered. And this can include reference lists, funding data, ORCID IDs, license data, clinical trial information, abstracts, and data about relationships between items. Information on errata, retraction, updates, and more can also be registered through our Crossmark service. And these are some content types that can be registered with CROSREF. Most people know that DOIs are used for journal articles, but CROSREF accepts all types of content which are listed here. And each content type we support has a unique set of required and recommended metadata. And I'm going to be talking about recommended metadata for peer review content or peer review records registered with CROSREF. Required metadata must be included, otherwise the submission will be rejected, but recommended metadata should be included to create a complete metadata record. Why is metadata important? It enables a lot of things. I'm going to talk about 4 of them right now. It is crucial for research integrity. It can act as a signal of trustworthiness because it tells us who funded the research, what are the affiliations of the authors, and could there be conflicts of interest. Metadata is critical for reproducibility, so researchers need to be able to build on each other's work. So verifying and reproducing the results from earlier work is helped by metadata, such as links to funding protocols, research data, and peer review reports that help to complete work or to create a complete picture of our work. Reporting and assessments may also be carried out by a variety of organizations, including universities and funders, in order to show accountability and benefits of public investment, also provide benchmarking information, demonstrate compliance with funder mandates, and decide what research to fund. So including metadata such as affiliations or rural identifiers, ORCID, these are funding and grant information, license URL, peer review reports, and links to preprints also help with this. We've also heard about discoverability. So the more metadata you include about a piece of content, the easier it is for others to search and discover. From researchers to organizations use CROSREF metadata to build their own tools and services. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the value and use of metadata, specifically for research integrity. And I will start by talking about peer review metadata best practices. The speakers who went before me, Dr. Daniela and Dr. Nicholas talked about the importance of peer review, the peer review processes, all the biases that peer reviewers should know about. And I believe that in this call, there's a number of peer reviewers. There could also be editors or editorial board members here, or maybe even journals, journal publishers present here. But so Crossref handles mostly the work that is done after peer review process is complete, when the editors want to now publish their work or to publish the peer review reports, or maybe to register peer review reports with Crossref to register the metadata therein. More of our members are keen to expose evidence of the integrity of the editorial processes, such as peer review. So registering peer review means that the metadata can provide relevant information about the reviews, such as whether they were part of peer review or post-publication. So there's evidence of the contribution from reviewers. These reviews are connected to the original work and other related objects. And also, it means that links to these documents persist over time for future generations. So these metadata may also support enrichment of scholarly discussion, reviewers, accountability, publishing transparency, and analysis or research on peer review. It is not currently possible to register the peer reviews record type using one of our helper tools. For example, we have different helper tools that are not quite complex, but then for peer review, editors have to use direct deposit of XML, and I'm going to show you some screenshots of an XML file for a peer review article. Great. So best practices we could recommend for editors registering peer reviews with Crossref, that they should include a review title. If you don't have a review specific title convention, we recommend that you include review or your own time for review, as well as a revision and review number. For example, a review pattern of review, title of article. So these will be review, analysis of the effects of bad metadata on discoverability to RC3. So revision number, review number. You also need to include reviewer information with the contributor section. So including information about anonymous reviewers. You also need to include relevant stage, type, and recommendation metadata. Also, you need to include license information, and you also need to include relationship metadata linking the review with the item being reviewed. So the relation type is going to be is review of. So what you don't need to do, or what you should not do, is to include metadata specific to the reviewed item, like author and title, because that is captured in the record of the reviewed item, which you supply via the ISReview of relationships. And another important thing that you need to know is that references are not currently supported for peer review records, but if someone cites your reviews, those citations will be included in our cited by service. Great. So peer reviews include referral reports, decision letters, and author responses. You may also register post-publication reviews using our peer review record type. Peer review metadata includes a number of review-specific elements, and many of them are optional to accommodate differences in review practices, but please include all elements relevant to your review when submitting a metadata record. Our schema includes support for the following fields that are here, including all the way from contributor to language. Yes, so this slide shows an example of connecting a review to the reviewed item through relations. You can see over here, there is this is a related item. The description, this is now the description of the peer review itself, and then it is a review of this particular article that already has a GOI that has been published over here. And then if you go next, this is an example of a complete review as it appears on our XML on an XML file that an editor registers with Crossref. So you'll find that you see the you see the different metadata elements over here, the depositor, and then you'll see who is registering this. You'll see the peer review, the stage over here. You see the contributor details over here, and then you'll see the title of this article or all of the review. You also see the over here there is the review dates. You can see the running number over here. You can see the description, and then you can see other elements here like the DOI for this. Yeah, so all the different metadata components that I talked about in this slide over here. Great. So I don't know how I'm doing time-wise. I want to go to the very last to the last part of my presentation.
You've got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, great. So I'm just gonna rush through this last part of my presentation. So metadata for research integrity. Yeah, we've seen the importance of different metadata elements and how those would support research integrity. So these are different. These are journal article, a data set, a conference paper, and a preprint. You see all the metadata around all of them and how they create relationships and connectedness to a piece of work to tell a whole story of a piece of work. Metadata support in research integrity, or they are trust signals. They help to understand when something was published, who funded the work, how is it related to other record types or other record or other content. And then which institution, for example, are the researchers affiliated with, even that it was affiliated with. So integrity of the scholarly record. As Crossref, we're focused on enriching metadata to provide more and better trust signals while keeping barriers to membership and participation as low as possible to enable an inclusive scholarly record. Yeah, and so we have a number of services that support research integrity. So because editorial decisions have the power to influence what research is communicated and how, Crossref has several tools that assist editors to demonstrate the editorial integrity by assessing a paper's originality and properly labeling and connecting updates, corrections, and retractions. Similarity check is one of them, which is used by editors to check against the percentage of similarity against other pieces of work before accepting it for publication and make their own editorial judgment. Crossmark is another one. You might have seen these on articles that you access on web or PDF pages. It helps to understand if the article is up to date or if there are changes or any editorial significant changes. For example, retractions being made, or corrections or significant corrections, or any other changes that have been made to a particular work, so that you're always reading something that's up to date. Yeah, towards my last slides. So participation reports to help editors to understand how they're doing in terms of their metadata element. We have a participation reports tool where which is accessible via the link that I've shared below, and they can have a look at how they're doing in terms of their completion that helps to connect their research to the global scholarly record. What can you do as an editor, author, and reviewer? You need to be aware of metadata relevant in your field. As an editor, you need to streamline your journal policies, encourage and collect key metadata. As an author, you need to include important metadata like ORCID IDs and ROR IDs along with your submissions, and you need to submit your metadata. Great, thank you. That is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to keep in touch. Great.
Thank you so much, Obanda. Everyone, what he's taking you through is the back end of what editors need to be aware of and need to be involved in when it comes to research integrity, and also its connection to peer review. I hope you can see that peer review is just not only done by the peer reviewers, but then editors have to work with DOI providers, particularly Crossref, who are integral to connecting connecting the information within that has been produced, either it has been peer reviewed or whether it has been published, make sure that all that metadata can be found. Why is this important? In the event that you're tracking any retraction, you will be using these DOIs to track that information. If you're doing cited reference search, if you're in bibliometrics or scientometrics, you'll be using these DOIs to aid in doing that search. So when we're talking about peer review and we're talking about research integrity, it's not only from the perspective of the human element. We needed to share with you the machine element aspect of it. Now we are getting into the research integrity bit, and I'd like to introduce our next speaker, that is Ivan Oransky from Retraction Watch. It's a recording, pre-recording. Unfortunately, he's in a totally different time zone from Daniela, even though they're still in the US, and he could not possibly make it for our within our time. So I'll just give an overview of what Retraction Watch is, and then Nicole is going to share the video recording. So Retraction Watch is a blog that tracks the retractions of scientific papers and related topics. It was launched in 2010 by science writers Ivan Oransky and Adam Marcus, and the platform aims to provide transparency in the scientific process by reporting on retractions, and has features like a leaderboard of authors with the most retractions. Additionally, it is a project of the nonprofit Center for Scientific Integrity, dedicated to exploring retractions as a window into the scientific process. As Nicole is preparing to share the screen, we need to understand how and why this is important. First of all, we need to know that the reality about retractions is that we need to understand that the reality about retractions is that for the longest time, authors were not talking about any retracted work that they had done. They would not talk about it, and journals were not talking about it. So you'd have retractions, retracted papers, and it would just be quiet. So you as an author, unfortunately, will end up still citing these retracted papers. So what has happened now with the rise of Retraction Watch, we're in a situation where even now citation databases are highlighting papers that have been retracted. Whether you look at Google Scholar, whether you look at Web of Science, Scopus, Dimensions, now they've indicated elements, papers that have been retracted. This is really important for you as authors so that you know what papers you can cite or use or not. Okay, so we are not trying to put down journals, but we are trying to, as I said, this workshop is about integrity. It's about research integrity. So what you should be aware of in the bigger picture that publishers have to adhere to, and what you should be aware of as a researcher when it comes to the retraction of papers, and what you should, with that level of information, what kind of informed based decisions can you make based on the fact that you've received a publication that has been retracted. So this is about giving access to information so that we can make clear judgments when it comes to our research life cycle and our research supports and supporting our research systems. So over to you, Nicole, with the recording. You can begin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ivan Oransky. I'm the co-founder of Retraction Watch and the executive director of the Center for Scientific Integrity. I'm sorry that I could not be with you live, but I'm in New York, and that makes time zones different. But I'm so glad to be able to at least share some thoughts with you, and I would be more than happy to follow up with anyone who wanted to talk further or ask other questions. So I'm going to talk today about retractions. As I mentioned, I'm the co-founder of Retraction Watch, and I want to start by just defining a retraction, or at least telling you what I mean when I say retraction. Retraction means that an article, a paper, should not be relied upon. It is not reliable. That's actually all it means, and it should stay in the literature, but with a big mark on it that says retracted. A lot of the time, this is because of bad behaviors, because of misconduct. That's not always the case. You will learn about some of the reasons for retraction in a moment, but all it means is it's unreliable. And I think that's important because retractions have a stigma, which is probably well earned, having to do with misconduct, but that actually isn't always the case. And so I just wanted to define the term so that everyone understands what I mean. And I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about my work and the work of my colleagues at the Center for Scientific Integrity. We have 6 different projects. Retraction Watch, which is probably the best known of our work. If people have heard of our work at all, it's probably Retraction Watch. Is, of course, a blog, a news outlet that has been around for 15 years, since 2010. We report on retractions and scientific misconduct, scientific publishing, issues like that. We're a journalism organization. Retraction Watch, the Retraction Watch database grew from that, and it really flowed from that work. And that is the leading and most comprehensive database of retractions, more than 60,000 now. It also includes, particularly unique to the databases, it includes reasons for all the retractions actually in every entry. So you can, and that's freely available. It's actually part of another organization, another nonprofit now called Crossref, as of a few years ago, which is great for all of us. We most recently launched the Medical Evidence Project, where we are looking, the group is looking at problems in the medical literature that might actually have an effect on the public health or medical decision-making, clinical decision-making. That's very exciting, and I won't say too much about that today, but please check it out. We have 2 programs that are about sleuths. I'm going to talk about sleuths today, and these are the people who are really doing the work of finding problems in the literature. And as I'll describe, there are certainly some in-house teams at publishers that now do this, but a lot of this work is still being done by, or at least indirectly done by and inspired by, the work of these people called sleuths. And so we have a sleuths in residence program where we actually hire sleuths, and they get the protection of libel, defamation insurance and things like this. And Elizabeth Bick, whose name will come up certainly during my presentation, she actually donated a large sum of money so that there can be a fund to support other sleuths, which we're very happy and grateful to be able to administer. And then finally, we have something called the Hijack Journal Checker, which I'll say more about later. But this is, again, sort of someone named Anna Abelkina has created this, and we're so delighted to work with her. We have hundreds of journals that are linked there. I'm going to save that one for later so that you understand, maybe stay interested in what hijack journals are. I'll come back to that term. So as you saw in my title slide, I want to make 2 claims. One is that retractions are on the rise, and the other is that retractions are not on the rise enough. So I want to sort of say that this is from Nature, from earlier in this year. Nature, the journalism side of Nature, they do an amazing job covering these issues. It's really terrific. They add a lot of original reporting and data analysis. And so what this shows is that retractions as a rate of occurrence, of a rate of incidence, if you will, are increasing. So if you go back to, say, 2002, 2003, there were about 100 retractions a year, and that meant that as a percentage, it was about 0.02%. That's about 1 in 5,000 papers being retracted. There was really a spike in 2023 where there were more than 10,000 retractions. So that's obviously a 100-fold increase over 2002. So it was a bit of a spike, and I'll explain why later on as I talk about one particular case involving Hindawi and Wiley. That was all one publisher, really. Most of those, anyway. They've been on the rise, and now it's about 1 in about 500 papers that's being retracted, so 0.2%. And there are 2, I think, sort of clear, obvious potential explanations for why they are growing at this rate. And it is, again, a 10-fold increase in rate over the past 20 years. One is that misconduct, which is responsible for a lot of retractions, as I'll get to in a moment, is on the rise. That's possible, and there's more and more evidence that that's likely to be true, and I'm going to talk about some of the reasons in a moment. But the other reason, which we're very secure and sort of confident in saying is true is that there are more people looking for problems. In other words, it's like a screening test for a particular condition, and more journals actually doing something about it, whether they wanted to or they were sort of, you know, pressured to or forced to. And so you're seeing really not necessarily more misconduct, but definitely more people finding it and doing something about it. And I think that's important. And I'm going to talk in a moment about why I think it should be even higher, that rate. So remember, 0.2% is the current rate of retractions, 1 in 500 papers. I'm just going to go very quickly. I'll flip through all of these to share with you a number of reasons for retraction. I'm not going to go into any of these in detail, obviously, in the interest of time today, but about 2/3 of the time, retractions are due to misconduct. A lot of the reasons for retraction that are on this slide are, in fact, would be considered misconduct. One of the, and I'm going to talk about image manipulation a little bit, because that's a particular sort of focus for a number of the sleuths, again, including Elizabeth Bick. And that's something where those of you who are familiar with sort of Western blots, this is a lot of life science, you know, biology labs that engage in this sort of work, and they use this to characterize proteins and do other kinds of analyses. And so that is an area where it is not easy, but it is fairly straightforward to find problems. And so that's one particular area to just focus on. The other is paper mills, which is a sort of broad definition, really, of, you know, what a paper mill is. But I heard a definition I liked a lot recently, which is any organization, and generally a for-profit company, often very lucrative for these companies, very shady companies, who are essentially black market companies, honestly. But these are companies that somehow falsify the scientific record. So they might sell people papers, or they might sell people authorship of papers that have already been accepted. And that's generally what's happening. That's clearly growing, and an area of great concern for a lot of for a lot of us in the community, and for a lot of publishers and universities, governments. And you've probably read a lot about that. And so I wanted to mention those two particular explanations and reasons for retraction. There are some people correcting errors on their own and retracting and doing what we say is doing the right thing, which are really great cases. Unfortunately, there aren't that many of them, and we want to encourage those. I mentioned briefly that the sleuths are the ones doing a lot of this work, and I'll show you this slide, which is just a screenshot from a page on Retraction Watch, which we're actually always updating. We'll be updating it again soon. These are the people who do the work and most of them are volunteers. Sometimes they are sued or threatened, and that is obviously really just it's terrible behavior on the part of people who are accused of misconduct, but that's what some of them choose to do. But these are the people, and they specialize. So some of them look at plagiarism, some of them look at image manipulation, some of them look at statistical anomalies or citation patterns, like sort of citation cartels, they're called, where people actually get into these groups where they cite each other in order to boost their H-index and things like that. But these are the people doing, you know, all this work. You know, I mentioned that, again, right now retractions are 0.2%. We're pretty confident that it should probably be more like 2%. So another tenfold increase. And it's based on, I've put up some sort of, evidence for this, according to at least our interpretation of it. And this all sort of centers on this idea that about 2% of papers include problems that would justify retraction, that would actually meet the criteria for retraction. So the sort of lesson of that is that papers are not being retracted as often as they should be. And we know this, sleuths keep lists of them. And journals take forever to retract when they actually do. And so which I mentioned on this next slide, sometimes universities actually send letters requesting retraction based on investigations, and journals do nothing for years. We recently reported on a case where Elsevier, probably the world's largest publisher, took 13 years to retract 2 papers. And then there's another paper that the authors had requested retraction at the same time in 2012, still hasn't been retracted. And part of the reason is that people threaten to sue. They don't like papers being retracted, and so they threaten to sue. There are other reasons, but partly just that publishers don't like retracting. It's sort of it's a bad sign, you know. It's sort of it's a a bad mark on their reputation if peer review didn't catch the problem. I want to just, in the brief time here today, just tell you that the real upstream problem is what we're dealing with here. And I'll sort of leave us with this, which is that we have a problem where ranking systems have completely overtaken the world, and they often rely heavily, in fact, almost all of them rely heavily on citations. And so we're all familiar with publish or perish, and now it's sort of be cited or perish, because the ranking systems, which is what universities, governments all use to determine funding, to determine obviously prestige, they rely very, very heavily on papers being published and then and authors being cited in particular universities, particular countries. And so it's hard to see, without changing this behavior and without changing these ranking systems, how we will possibly sort of fix this problem of growing retractions. Growing retractions themselves are not the problem. The problem is the behavior that leads to them. And so just to close, I promised you I'd tell you what a hijacked journal is, because I think hijacked journals, and again, this is a term that was really created by someone, Anna Abelkina in Germany, who we work with for the Hijacked Journal Checker. These are journals that are listed, they're indexed by Scopus usually, but other places as well, other indices as well. And they're small, maybe it's the only journal that a particular society publishes. And what they do is somebody has sort of forgotten to, pay for the domain name, or maybe they just make a fake website that looks like the original journal, and they fake it. They actually fool researchers into publishing work there, but really they're just charging them money, article processing charges, to publish there. And suddenly the journals are publishing more papers than ever in subjects that have nothing to do with the original journal field. And so Anna calls them hijacked journals, cloned journals often, but hijacked journals. And it just gives you, I think it's a reminder, it brings together the idea that every incentive, whether it's publishing, whether it's publishers publishing more because they make money from article processing charges, every incentive is basically, driven toward growth. It drives toward growth. And, people cutting corners, taking advantage. And again, it all gets back to this upstream problem of rankings, because, you need to be cited more, you need to publish more, you need to be cited more, publishers need to publish more papers. So it's this really, sort of vicious cycle that we're in. And I think the only way to get out of it is to, well, I would say do away with rankings. I know that's a tall order. I'm not sure a lot of people agree with me on that, but it's something that I think we should consider. So I want to just thank you, and I'll skip over those couple in the interest of time, and happy to follow up with anyone and who's interested in our work or who has further questions or challenges for our work. We always welcome that. And so thank you very much. Again, sorry I couldn't be there live with you, but I really welcome this opportunity, and thanks so much for it. And best wishes for a successful meeting.
Thank you so much, Ivan. That was a very good presentation on the insight on what it entails to what goes on in the back end when it comes to retractions. As we mentioned earlier on, our topic on research integrity, you've gone through the metadata element of it with the Crossref, and what editors have to go through, and also peer reviewers will need to go through, what the peer review process will go through at the metadata level. We've gone through the human element of it. We talked about even the biases. We talked about the community element of it as well with peer review. And now when it comes to research integrity, we've talked about how the DOIs actually contribute to improving the research integrity of publications that are produced. And this is what editors are going through. And most importantly now, its connection to research integrity on the bigger picture on what the stakeholders are trying to do to create awareness on the retraction of publications. As I said, as much as we are working with publishers, it's also letting you know what publishers are held to task to making sure that they can build trust with you as authors, such that when you publish with them, they have ticked all the boxes So our next speaker rather, is from Scifinity, and she is the editor-in-chief of Genomed, Dr. Hanie Yangutkar. I hope I pronounced it properly. And she will be talking about strengthening peer review workflows and looking at the case study of Scifinity's approach. And once she's spoken, we are going to get into an interactive session. It will take about 15 minutes where we need to have a better understanding on your concept on peer review and research integrity based on what we've discussed. Over to you, Dr. Hanie.
Thank you very much. Can I check you hear me okay?
Very well, very well.
Excellent. Excuse me. I think I need Nicole's help to move the slides for me, please.
Okay, just
Nicole, please share the screen and then, yes.
Okay. One moment.
Okay. So as I said, as Nicole is preparing, as I said, this is a very interactive session. So feel free to ask as many questions. We're already seeing questions in the chat, and we're already sending them to the respective speakers who will be answering them immediately. So you may continue.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for having me. I think we all have heard a lot of interesting presentations. I myself learned a lot, so thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Hania Yagutkar, and I am a professor of health data and technology at the University of Southampton, and I also serve as editor-in-chief of Genomed Connect. So my background is in medicine and genetic epidemiology with a focus on obesity and cardiometabolic outcomes. A lot of my work sits at the intersection of genetics, health data science, and translation into clinical impact. So in this session, I will keep things practical. I will share how we run peer review at Genomed Connect, what we do to protect research integrity, and what reviewers can do to make the process stronger and fairer. Next slide, please. So here is the plan for today. First, a quick overview of Genomed Connect. Then I will talk through our peer review process and the workflow we use. And after that, I will share the essentials for quality peer review. And finally, the reviewer responsibilities that really protect research integrity. Next slide, please. So let's start with Genomed Connect, which is an open access journal that sits at the intersection of genomics, precision medicine, and translational research. Our aim is to publish work that connects, for example, molecular insights with biological meaning and clinical relevance. We welcome high quality, original research, reviews, and also methodological papers, as long as they are rigorous, transparent, and ethically sound. So in short, we like papers that are clear, careful, and honest, and not mysterious. Next slide, please. So the journal focuses on genomic driven research with clear biological or medical relevance, as I said, and this includes human genetics, functional genomics, bioinformatics, multiomics, and studies that translate molecular data into clinical or population level insights. So what we look for is not just novelty, but solid methodology and responsible interpretation. Big claims are welcome as long as the data can actually support them. Next slide, please. So there are several practical benefits to publishing with us, especially during our inaugural year. First, there are no article processing charges, which I know is very good news for most researchers. We also offer complementary English editing and graphical enhancement, so authors are supported in presenting their work clearly. Once a paper is published, we we are still on this slide. So yeah, once a paper is published, we actively promote it to improve visibility. And importantly, our typical first decision time is around 4 to 6 weeks. So authors are not left waiting for months. 4 to 6 weeks may not sound fast in everyday life, but in academic publishing, it's almost a sprint, so believe me. For authors, the goal is a smooth process, clear decisions, constructive feedback, and a fair review. If you are doing careful work in genomics or translational medicine, we would love to see your submissions. Now, next slide, please. So there are several ways to engage with the journal. You can submit your work as an author or volunteer as a reviewer or express interest even in joining the editorial board. For early career researchers, reviewing a particularly valuable is a valuable way to learn how good papers and also not so good papers are evaluated. And reviewing other people's work and paper is often the fastest way to realize how carefully you want your own paper to be reviewed. So we really want to grow the community in a way that supports quality and integrity. Next slide, please. So peer review contributes to these topics. So today my focus is strengthening peer review workflows. Peer review is not just a box that we tick, it's the backbone of trust in publishing. When peer review is done well, it improves quality, it strengthens credibility, and also protects the scientific record. So in practice, this is what a strong peer review helps us do. Confirm the study is sound, spot gaps in methods or interpretation, improve clarity and reporting, and increasingly detect problems like, for example, manipulated images, as you learned, questionable data patterns or text that looks AI generated or stitched together. And yes, sometimes peer review is the moment we realize the author might actually be a very confident chatbot. So at Scifinity and at Genomed Connect, we try to balance three things: integrity, transparency, and efficiency. Next slide, please. So how the peer review process works, this slide shows the overall flow. When a manuscript comes in, the editorial office does initial checks. That means, they check for similarity, they check for basic integrity, author information, ethics statements, and formatting. And after that, I look at fit. So I ask the question, does it fit the journal scope? And does it meet a basic threshold of quality and clarity? If it passes these steps, then we send it out to peer review, and reviewers then assess the paper. We collect their reports, and we make an editorial decision based on the evidence in those reports. So a desk rejection may feel painful, but it's still kinder than like 3 months of silence. Next slide, please. So these are the main steps. Once a manuscript reaches review, we select reviewers carefully. We invite them and we give them clear guidance. So we set also a set of a typical timeline, usually, as I said, about 2 weeks. Then we follow up to keep things moving. And we know that the reviewers are busy, reviewing is unpaid. So when we send our reminders, we try to be very polite because otherwise some reviews quietly disappear into the academic void. So when reviews come back, we check whether they actually cover the paper properly. If a report is too brief or misses key areas, we may invite additional reviewers, and the aim is not just speed. The aim is a decision that is fair, well supported, and helpful. Next, please. So we use 5 components to strengthen peer review. First, choosing the right reviewers. Second, clear reviewer guidelines. Third, an optimized workflow. Fourth, constructive feedback that helps authors to improve. And finally, confidentiality. So reviewers can be honest and independent. Next slide, please. So let's start with the first step. Reviewer selection is one of the biggest quality levers. We look for genius expertise in the topic area and a solid publication record. So we actively manage conflicts in simple terms. We avoid, for example, reviewers who are too close to the authors. For example, if they've been recent co-authors on a paper, they work in the same institution, or they have other relationship that could bias the review. And occasionally, in my personal experience, you get reviewer suggestions that include the author's even supervisors, lab mates, or even former flatmate. Next slide, please. So our reviewer expectations follow COPE principle and align with journal ethics. That means fairness, confidentiality, transparency, about conflicts, and professional tone. So we keep the guidance practical, so reviewers know what good looks like, and authors receive consistent standards across reviews. So a review that starts with "I don't like this paper" is not very helpful. Next slide, please. So we run everything through an online system, and it keeps a full history of reviews, which is very helpful when a revised version comes back. It is helpful to the authors, to the reviewers, and also to me as the editor-in-chief. So reviewers can quickly see what they said before, for example, how the authors responded to their comments, how they changed the paper, how they revised the paper, and whether the response actually addressed the concerns. So we also collect feedback on the process because systems should improve over time. So we collect feedback from both reviewers and the authors. Next slide, please. Okay. So we certainly encourage constructive reviews, regardless of whether the recommendation is accept, revise, or reject. Because even if we decide to reject the paper, the authors still deserve to know why and deserve to learn about the concerns and learn how they can improve their work. The most helpful reviews are specific and actionable. So we use a structured review form to guide reviewers, as you can see here. And that covers key sections: methods, results, interpretation, and reporting. So while still giving space for general comments, we also give these guidelines to the reviewers. So as I said, this paper is not a review. It doesn't tell anything about the paper. Next slide, please. So this is an example of the structure. The point is to make reviews more consistent and complete. So critical issues are not missed. And it helps early career reviewers too, because it gives a clear roadmap for what to look for. And early career reviewers often ask, where do I even start? Next slide. We use single blind review process. Reviewers see authors' names, but authors do not see reviewer identities. And confidentiality matters because it protects reviewers from pressure and allows frank and independent feedback. And yes, authors really do try to guess who reviewed their paper, and they're usually wrong. Next slide, please. So this section is about the reviewer role. Peer review only works because reviewers give their time and expertise, and the goal here is to make that effort as useful and as fair as possible. So next slide, please. What we ask from reviewers is straightforward. Be objective. That means judge the work on scientific merit. Be comprehensive. That means cover key areas. That includes methods, analysis, clarity, originality, relevance, interpretation, etc. We ask the reviewers to be constructive. So that means highlight the strengths as well as weakness and give suggestions the authors can actually use to improve the work. And when possible, support key critics such as reasoning and references, so the authors understand the reason behind the decision. So this paper contradicts my previous work, is not a valid reason for rejection. Next slide, please. So confidentiality is essential, as I said. A submitted manuscript is not public, and reviewers should not share it, discuss it outside the review, or use the ideas or data for their own work. And once the review is complete, they should delete local copies. These small habits protect the integrity of the process. If ChatGPT knows about the manuscript before the editor does, that means something's gone wrong. Next slide, please. So another important responsibility of reviewers is declaring conflicts of interest. Reviewers need to be aware of anything that could affect their objectivity, such as collaborating with the authors, working at the same institution, or having financial or professional interests that might bias the review. And conflicts of interest are not rare, and having a conflict is not a moral failure. The key is transparency. So if a reviewer has a relationship with the authors, the institution, or anything that could affect objectivity, they should declare it right away. And if it is significant, they should decline the review, so we can reassign it to someone else. And declaring conflicts of interest is a professional responsibility that protects both the authors and the integrity of the review process. Next slide, please. So use of AI. This is increasingly important. Reviewers should not upload manuscript into generative AI tools. That risks confidentiality and can also create unintended data exposure. So peer review relies on expert judgment. If reviewers use tools, it should be within journal policy and without sharing the manuscript content externally. So in general, we recommend reviewers rely on their own expertise and critical evaluation. At least for now, we as editors, we prefer human reviewers, not machine reviewers. Next slide, please. And finally, references. Reviewers should only recommend citations that genuinely strengthen the manuscript. And we discourage irrelevant citations, and we strongly discourage self-serving citation requests because good peer review improves the science. It should never be about boosting anyone's metrics. So if your review includes 5 citations and all of them are yours, we do notice. Thank you very much, and I hope that was helpful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hanye. That has been very insightful. And thanks for taking us through the process of that Scifinity goes through when it comes to the peer review process. As we said in the beginning of this workshop, we are bringing you all together because one of the things we are going to do is that those who are interested in learning the peer review process, Scifinity is willing to provide some time so that you can shadow their peer review team members. So if you are interested, please let us know. Put it also in the chat so that we can collate it. Put your names and your email addresses so that we can follow up with you, such that by the time now we are planning now the support, the training. It will be like a training of trainers, shadowing support on the peer review system. We are very clear on who within the webinar will be given the required support on peer review. Now, if you look at your chart, I have put a link on collaborative session, called a collaborative session. Now, this has 3 questions. Open it, you can answer if you're interested, please put in your name and email address. Don't just write interested. Put in your name and email address and say you're interested. So then it will be easy for us to follow up with you. Okay, I am putting the link again. So just check the chat. Check the chat. Please tell me that you have it. Can you see it? All right, let me do that again. Please confirm you've received the link. Do you have it now? Good. Open the link and answer those 3 questions. I'll give you 5 minutes. Answer the questions, and these are in line with what we've gone through today on peer review, the biases in peer review, and research integrity. This will come in handy, especially when you're going to be shadowing the editors, the editors or the peer reviewers within Scifinity. As we began the workshop, we say that most of these peer reviewers are not paid. So the fact that Scifinity is going to accommodate and make time to help do a training of trainers of peer review for peer reviewers. This is really important. This is capacity building for the community they are going to be working with closely. But most importantly, it is also an insight for you to understand how the publishing ecosystem works. All right. So share with us. And then those who are identified, we will work closely with the Scifinity team to see how the shadowing will be done. All right, so I'm giving you 5 minutes. So answer the questions. I will share the screen to see. Kindly, yes, we're already seeing you answering the questions. Start answering the questions. And here we go. Can you see that? Good. So answer the questions. And then there are 3 questions. So there's one on there's on research integrity. There are 2 on research integrity and 1 on peer review. So please answer the questions. Don't worry about the language. We will help clean it up as well. So I'm giving you 5 minutes, and as you're filling it, as we wind up, I'm going to just give highlights of what you've answered. Okay. So number 1 is on peer review. Number 2 is on research integrity. Number 3 is on how reviewers can improve honesty and transparency. Right? Please continue. I'm giving you 5 minutes. Okay. Feel free to answer what makes peer review fair and trustworthy. Your honest opinions are welcome. No answer is incorrect. We just need to understand your views on this. Okay. Five minutes, then we can wind up. And in the meantime, please put in your names. Good. We'll see how we'll work with it. Please don't worry about the grammar. We have a team here that is helping clean it up. So just write your views verbatim. It's okay. We'll get the context of it. So there's one question that is answering: how can reviewers help improve honesty and transparency in the review process? Please answer that as well. Good. We are getting some really good responses on this. Please continue. Please don't put your email addresses in here. This is where you put in your answers. As I said, no comment is wrong. We just want to see your views on this. Please don't put your email addresses in here. Don't put your names and email addresses here. Put it in the chat. If you're interested in taking part in the workshop, put it in the chat. Just, we want to see your views. Don't worry about the English. We are cleaning it up. We are doing this real time. So don't worry about the English. Even if you write it verbatim, we'll get the context of it. Okay. These are really good responses. Please don't use AI. We can see that right now. We've just been talking about it. We can see that you're using AI, so kindly refrain from it. We want to hear your views. We want to hear your views. Refrain from using AI. We just need to hear your views. We need to get your views, because remember, even when you're going to be shadowing the experts at Scifinity, these are the elements that they'll be looking at as well. Okay. So as it has been as you are still filling in the questions, I'd like to wind up and truly thank you for the time you've made, especially for the speakers. You're coming from totally different time zones, and for the time you've made to take part in this webinar. And as we are winding up, these are some of the comments that you have shared with us in regards to what you're looking at in terms of peer review and research integrity as per the 3 questions that we shared with you. So the first question was, what makes peer review fair, trustworthy, objective, transparent, and with integrity? So some of the comments were, it's if we are open and not conflicted, suggesting improvements that enhance quality and publishability, and timeliness and actionability as well. If the quality is controlled by the process of a team that is reviewing the articles, and transparency when it comes to the clear guidelines set by the journal. So clearly what is coming out here is about transparency. Now, the second question was, what integrity issues have you seen or heard about in peer review? And one was plagiarism and conflict of interest of authors, between authors and peer reviewers. Then there's also element of biasness, self-supporting citation. And you see also the last speaker was also talking about that, because they are very conscious about this. The use of AI for reviews, objectivity as well. So, and lack of transparency. So these are some of the issues that we are seeing coming up, and you're still continuing writing them, and this is okay. And how can reviewers help improve honesty and transparency in the peer review process? Openness, self-evaluation as regards to biasness, objectivity, by carefully reading the manuscript without using AI tools. The manuscript should fall under the review, and that the manuscript should always fall under the reviewer's domain, and by being objective. These are just some of the topics, some of the answers that you have shared with us. So I hope this webinar has been helpful. As I said, the objective of this webinar was to, first of all, introduce our partners to you. They are building a community. They are ready to work with you. As you can see, we've also brought in the various stakeholders we work with, especially when it comes to scholarly communication and scholarly publishing. That is why we had our partners from Crossref, we had Retraction Watch, we had pre-review, so that you can understand the greater picture when it comes to scholarly publishing, peer review, and research integrity, the various elements that are involved in research integrity. There's the metadata element of it, there's the human element of it. We've shared with you some of the challenges involved when it comes also to the human element of it and what we need to be aware of. And this workshop ends with us sending out a call that for those who are interested in shadowing the Scifinity team, send us your email and name and say that you're interested in shadowing their team, so that you can understand the intricacies of peer review. This also gives you an insight on what to expect when you're working in a publishing house or when you're submitting your journal to a publishing house, because with time, you are going to be called in as peer reviewers or associate editors. So some of you are either doing your PhD or your postdocs or in the process of getting there. And this is what you will need to go through. You need to understand this. And also from the publisher side, I hope you understand the levels they have gone to in order to win your trust so that you can work with them. So as much as they're based in the Middle East, remember the Middle East also goes all the way into North Africa, which is part of the continent. And by virtue of being in North Africa, of course, they're interested in publications coming out of Sub-Saharan Africa. So this is a global community. So academic publishing is for the global community, and it's all of us working as one to make sure that we are publishing in the right journals and we understand scholarly publishing practices. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and do have a lovely day. Bye for now.